Well, hey, everyone. Happy Monday. Alyssa Orange, Mike Irwin here. And, you know, Mike, I never asked you, how was your weekend?
I can't remember.
There was a lot of exciting things happening.
You know, you remember things that happened 60 years ago, but not last Friday.
Well, it was a good weekend for Arkansas athletics on the Hill. I think everyone, maybe except soccer yesterday, won. That was in action.
It's kind of scary, really, because you start asking yourself, what's going on around here? Because Arkansas fans are so used to the bottom dropping out.
Yeah.
You know, just it's the whole Petrino thing. You got it rolling. You're about to become like a top 5 football program, and then, whoops, motorcycle? What? Is that an April Fool's joke?
Yeah, you know, you obviously hold your breath a little bit because of, you know, if you've been a Hog fan long enough, you're prepared for stuff like that.
Number one. Basketball, what, 12 in one, 13 in the other coaches poll?
Yeah, and women's basketball, 13.
Women's basketball is up there.
Yeah.
I mean, women's softball, they're winning. Winning in just about everything.
Track,
I think they may have lost,
and field, men and women
number 1
won.
and number 4 or something like that.
Won an SEC
I think maybe they
title.
lost a soccer match.
They did.
What happened there? Let's get mad about that.
Lost to St. Louis by 2. What is happening?
Have that.
I don't know, but all I know is that it's a really good time right now to be an Arkansas Razorback fan, which is going to make Ask Mike a lot of fun this week. So we'll get it going. Our first question comes from Dr. Strangepork, who says, Coach Van Horn is one of the best coaches ever. He has been at Arkansas for 18 years. He has never said anything that I can find about the possibility of retiring, but is there a short list of possible candidates? Ooh, I like this question, and I like your answer.
I don't think we're anywhere near having to discuss that. He's 60 years old, hard to believe because he doesn't look 60, but he's 60 years old. I think he's got some more years left. He's in good health. He's making $925,000 a year. Who's going to quit that job? And plus, he's just got that new baseball performance center. That his recruiting has already been like top 5, top 10 for several years. Now it's going to get even better. They've been to the College World Series like 3 times in the last 5 or 6 years. It's becoming a regular thing. Most people think it's only a matter of time till he wins the national championship, maybe this year. So, and I don't think he'll stop with one national championship. I think he'd want more. So I don't think we have to worry about that anytime soon. However, who would be a possible candidate? Well, I will say that because of Arkansas's facilities and because of their fan base, which is known all over the SEC and really all over the country, if that job opens up at some point, and it will eventually, and if the program's still where it is right now, you're going to have coaches all over the country applying for that job. But here's what I know about Hunter Yurachek, if he's the guy that makes the hire. What does he always say? He doesn't want somebody that's just looking for another job. He wants somebody that wants to be here.
Yeah.
Who is that?
Tony Vitello.
We know who that is.
Yeah.
Tony Vitello was a very popular assistant coach under Van Horn. He actually played at Missouri. I don't think he's ever going to go back to Missouri.
He's from Missouri, but
I don't think he'll go back there to coach Missouri baseball. Their facilities are horrible. What happened there?
You dropped your mic. You're all right.
It's okay. They're horrible. So he liked it here. He's got lots of friends here, and he would qualify as one of those guys that would come in and interview for the job, and he could convince Yurachek, I want this job. This is the job I've always wanted.
And I think it's important to point out, too, he left to go take the head coaching job at Tennessee. And you look right now at where Tennessee is, and they're in the rankings. He's been able to turn that program around quickly.
Pretty quickly.
We know that he's a really good recruiter. But when he left, the talk was, no, you don't want to see Tony Vitello go. But Tony Vitello needs to leave to get some head coaching job so that he can come back and be Dave's successor.
Sure.
So,
and we're not saying that's who it absolutely is, but that would be my best guess.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a lot of people's best guess. All right, next question. Razorback Redneck says, I see where Arkansas is #1 in the country in college baseball this week. Has that ever happened before?
Let's talk about being #1 first, because they're #1 in 2 polls. There's 2 or 3 other polls they're not #1 in. That's the way baseball is. But it is a big deal to be #1. I had said yesterday on the pig trail, I didn't know if they'd ever been ranked #1 before. That may be where that question came from, because I didn't know. Looking around today, RazorbackStats.com, I believe, the guy that does that's pretty knowledgeable, although he says he's not as knowledgeable on baseball as others. He says and I think he said it was the 2012 season. I get these two dates mixed up, one 2012, one 09. He said that Arkansas was ranked #1 in a preseason poll. They quickly lost a game maybe that first week, so they didn't stay #1. And then I think in the other one of those years, either 09 or 12, at some point in the season, they won a big game against a highly ranked team, and they were all highly ranked, so they were #1 briefly there too. I don't think they've ever been #1 to stay for very long. And I don't want to jinx them, but I don't know how long you'll stay #1 this year. I mean, we've already seen 1 week into the season, #1 really changes. I mean, Florida was #1, they dropped. Then we see Ole Miss #1, now they've dropped. Because what happens in baseball is you lose a lot more games, even if you're good, than you would in other sports because of the nature of baseball. It's all about your pitching. You get the wrong guy on the mound, somebody comes along and beats you. Doesn't mean you're terrible, but the way they do these polls, if you're #1 and you suddenly lose last week, there's enough good teams, they'll probably move back ahead of you. So this is just my way of preparing Hog fans for the probability that Arkansas won't stay #1 for very long, because you're going to play people, you're going to lose a game or two, and then you're going to drop, and somebody else is going to move up. There are all kinds of SEC teams just lurking back there. The real key is to stay, to me, in the top 5, because you'll still be in a position where whoever becomes #1 loses, then maybe you're #1 again. The idea is to maybe be #1 at 2 or 3 different points in the season. But here's the real thing that matters. And this is what you really need to look at. What if Arkansas becomes, at the end of the regular season, the #1 overall seed in the NCAA baseball tournament? That would be huge.
Yeah.
That's never happened, and that would be big, because now you're drawing the lowest seed in the tournament. Does it go all the way down to 64? I think it does.
Yeah, you've got 16 regional locations with 4
so
teams.
You're playing the lowest ranked team in there, the team that was the last to get in, and then even after that, you're not playing highly ranked teams. So it probably punches your ticket to the second round a lot easier, to the super regionals. And even your super regional, you're not going to get some hot super regional team opposite of you. I mean, the seeding to be #1, it's not a guarantee of Omaha, but it really, really helps. And it would be cool to be the #1 seed in the country.
It would, yeah. I mean, it would be cool to be one of the top 8 national seeds at all once baseball postseason begins. But #1 has a lot more advantages.
That's never happened.
And so that would be fun. All right, Hog asked, what word on any word on spring football practice dates?
Yeah, the first spring practice is a week from tomorrow.
That's crazy.
The 9th of March. And then what they will do this year is they're going, last year I think they went Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday. This year they're going Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. They do that every week. I think they take 1 week off for spring football, and then what's the date? April 19th for spring, for the spring game? April 17th for the spring game. Don't know. There's been no word that I know of as to whether they'll let people into that game. I'm guessing they will, because I think by then the protocols on COVID will be different. But right now, I haven't heard that fans will be able to go to the game. It will be on television. And the good news for us is we're going to be allowed to go to the first part of practices back like it was for years and years and years. We didn't go last fall because of COVID. And so that was good news. So we'll be able to do a better job of informing the public what's happening with spring football as it progresses, because we'll be there for part of the practices.
Yeah, that'll be exciting. All right, Blood Red Hog wants to know, what's the real story behind the Hatfield departure and Jack Crow hiring? That move left Hog fans unprepared for the SEC. Did Frank really grab Jack off the plane after that was taking Hatfield to Clemson? I feel like we answered that like last week.
No,
or was it a little different?
We got in. It was more about Jimmy Johnson.
Yes. Okay.
So this, and Jimmy Johnson and Hatfield, but this is a different Hatfield thing. To answer that question, you've really got to go back. That was the pull Jack Crow off the plane thing happened in early January of 1990. Go back to the '87 season, 3 years before that. And what had happened was that was Hatfield's 4th year at Arkansas. And it'd been a little frustrating. Fans were already starting to get a little frustrated with him. Arkansas had not been to the Cotton Bowl since Frank in 11 years earlier. So They were a little frustrated. Okay, so they're 4-1 going into the Texas game, and they've just gotten 2 weeks earlier just trashed by Jimmy Johnson in Miami. We talked about that last. Johnson was just furious at Frank, and he really poured it on Arkansas 51-7 or whatever. So fans are already mad at Hatfield for that. So Arkansas had never been beaten like that in Little Rock ever. And so they're still mad about that. Now here comes Texas, and it's not a typical Texas team. They're 2-3 on the season. Arkansas is 4-1. Arkansas has I think a 14-10 lead in the fourth quarter. Texas has just a little bit of time to go down and score. Okay, they get down to like the 16-yard line, and the clock is running out. They don't have any timeouts. They're out there scrambling around the huddle trying to figure out what to do. It's pretty obvious they're going to just run to the line of scrimmage. The quarterback's probably going to signal the play and then try to make it happen. And this is not 5 yards. This is 16 yards. And everybody knows that Texas has no timeout. Suddenly there's a timeout. I was there. I remember people were like, what? We were in the press box like, what? They can't call timeout. How? They don't have any timeouts. Wait a minute. Arkansas called timeout. I've never known if Fred Goldsmith called the timeout himself, he was the defensive coordinator, or if he convinced Hatfield to do it. But either way, it was Arkansas that called timeout because Goldsmith felt like he needed time to get his defense ready. Well, come on. A defense is a defense. You're never going to know what the offense is going to do, but you're in a lot better shape when they have so little time that they're just got to get up to the line of scrimmage and go. Well, now when you give them a timeout, they got time to go over there, come up with the best possible play, which they did. It was a 16-yard touchdown pass, and they won the game, 16-14. Okay, Frank was like bent out of shape to the max after that game. And he went to Hatfield and said, that's the dumbest thing I've ever seen a coach do. Your defensive coordinator I already thought he was a bozo. Now I'm convinced. You don't have a very good offensive coordinator either. In fact, your whole staff is beneath you. You're a really good head coach. You got a bunch of yo-yos on your staff. I, as a head coach, always built my success around having a great staff. You're making it too hard on yourself. You've got these yo-yos. I need to help you. I have connections all over the country, which he did. I can get you the best coaches. Just tell me, and give me the name of somebody you want. I'll go get them. We'll pay them. But we've got to get rid of Fred Goldsmith. And Hatfield said, no, these are my coaches. If you want me as your coach, I'm the one that hires the coaches. Frank gets really steamed.
It's fine. It's over there.
Frank gets really steamed. He basically goes to Dan Ferreter, the chancellor, and says, I got to fire this guy. Well, Ferreter goes, well, wait a minute. He just won 9 games. He's honest. He's not a cheater. Why would we fire him now? Why would we do that? No, I can't approve that. Now, this is where Frank, the practical guy, comes in, because Frank had the power. I'm telling you, he had the pull in those days. He could have gotten Ferreter fired if he wanted to, and went ahead and fired Goldsmith and Hatfield and everybody, if that's what he wanted to do. But Frank never operated like that. He was much more practical. And what he did was he went out and got Goldsmith a head coaching job. He just talked to some people and said, hey, you have an opening? This guy would be a great head coach for you. I kidded him one day after he did that, because I was in his office the day he was on the phone talking to this coach, this AD, where Goldsmith got hired. And he was telling him how great he was and all this stuff. I said, Frank, you already have a big nose. Your nose is going to be like Pinocchio after what you just did. And he was just, hey, I had to get him a job. So Goldsmith gets the job. He's gone. Arkansas immediately gets better, and they win the Southwest Conference the next year. And then they get another offensive coordinator, which turned out to be Jack Crow, and they won the Southwest Conference again and almost won the Cotton Bowl. Tennessee had, edged them out by a couple of points or whatever. So Frank's attitude was, well, I mean, we got it all done. All I wanted was to go to the Cotton Bowl and win the Southwest Conference. We did that. I'm happy. Hatfield wasn't happy because his attitude was, you threatened to fire me. You wanted to run my coaches off. And Frank said, yeah, but the coaches got better. Your staff got better. Why are you upset? And I don't think he thought Hatfield would leave, but Hatfield suddenly took the Clemson job after the Cotton Bowl, which was in early January. So it caught Frank off guard. He said later that was the only time as an athletic director he'd ever not known who he was going to go to next if a coach left or if he had to fire a coach, because he just didn't think Hatfield would leave. It was his alma mater. He'd just been to back-to-back Cotton Bowls. I was there at the 1990 Cotton Bowl in Dallas at this big, huge venue. It was like 8,000 Razorback fans there. And there was talk that he might leave, and they were just chanting, "Please don't go. Please don't go." And Frank thought, man, there's no way he's leaving. The fans love him like that. Well, he did. And so I think Frank explained it later. It's too late in the recruiting process to go on a 2-week coaching search, and he didn't have anybody specific in mind. So he did. He went out to the airport and pulled Jack Crow. Now, it wasn't the plane with Hatfield was on it. This was a plane that was taking his staff. Hatfield was already there. So these are the assistant coaches. And he went and pulled him off that plane and said, "I'm offering you the head coaching job." Jack Crow took it. Now, Jack Crow was an outstanding offensive coordinator. He wasn't a good head coach. He just wasn't. He didn't have that thing you have to be to be a head coach. And so they had a terrible year that first year. They came back and went to a bowl game, the Independence Bowl, the second year. But the third year, they started off with that loss to the Citadel, and that was the first SEC year. The very next week, they were due to go on the road and play South Carolina in the first ever SEC game, and Frank just thought, we can't have this guy as a head coach. Now, I've complimented Frank a lot on this show because I really think he was terrific. He screwed up big time there, because there's no way he made the team better by firing Jack Crow. You just can't do that. You eliminated a coach off the staff. He had no choice but to promote Joe Kynes. Coach Joe Kynes is the defensive coordinator. He now has split duties. He's got to be the defensive coordinator and the head coach. Messed everything up. I think they went 3-7-1 that year. And then Kynes didn't get the job. That's when Danny Ford got hired. Now, the real question is, if Hatfield had never left, would Arkansas have gotten off to a better start in the SEC? I don't think there's any question about that. Hatfield, to this day, has the best winning percentage of any Arkansas coach in the history of the school, even better than Frank. I mean, Petrino, any of them. And so he was a better coach than Jack Crow. Now, would they have torn up the SEC? No. They were going to go downhill because it was a better conference with more teams that were competitive, but they wouldn't have done what they did, you know, in those early years. It would have been better than that.
All right. Revolution asks, by the way, you're just an encyclopedia. How much of that did you know off the top of your head versus had to kind of just double check facts?
What?
What you just told us.
No, I didn't have to.
All off the top up here.
I can remember stuff that happened years ago. I just can't remember last weekend.
Okay, that's fine. I mean, it's just really impressive to listen to you tell stories. Okay, Revolution asks, what do you think is the best possible upside for this Hunks basketball team? Round of 32, Sweet 16, Elite 8, dare we dream Final Four? I'm thinking Sweet 16, probably not enough tournament experience to survive pressure beyond that point.
You know, the only thing I can say about that is they're probably right now, as it stands, a 4 seed. It's possible they could become a 3 seed. Obviously, the higher seeded you are, theoretically, the better chance you have of advancing, at least in the first 2 rounds. But what do we know about the NCAA basketball tournament? That's when you have the upsets. And so I don't think having a good seed really protects you that much. And the real problem with asking me to tell anybody how well they're going to do is I can't see the bracket right now.
Yeah.
And the bracket is everything. When I saw Arkansas matched up against Butler a few years ago, I said they can't win that game. I knew enough about Butler to know Arkansas didn't match up well against them. It was the bad luck of the draw.
Yeah.
So until I can see who they're going to play and who's coming next, if you win this game, who are you likely to play after that? That's where you can kind of look at the tournament and say, well, you know, I think they could win 2 games or whatever. So still, he did ask the question, so I'm going to say, I think, yeah, they're a Sweet 16 team, but that's a guess. And if they do that, it'll be the first time since Nolan. So
that'll be nice. I think if you just look at the team and the talent and the roster, yes, they get through the first weekend.
But it's all a matter of the draw.
Don't know. Yeah. All right. Next question is from I Was There in 1969. Says, a few weeks back, there was a minor uprising on social media against Eric Musselman. Who do these people think we could hire if we fire Musselman after 2 seasons? Any decent coach wouldn't come in within 500 miles of Fayetteville if that were to happen.
Well, I mean, this just says so much about social media because he's right. it was on Hogville, but it was all over social media. And there were people saying, hey, this guy's in over his head, he doesn't know what he's doing. We made a mistake, hired the wrong guy, blah, 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 blah. That wasn't everybody on Hogville, everybody on social media. It was just some people. Now, those same people this week, when Arkansas is ranked just outside the top 10 in both polls, what are they saying now?
Worship him.
Nothing. He's great.
Yeah.
Because you can do that on the internet. Now, here's the thing. He was never in danger of being fired no matter what happened. Because Eric Musselman, or Hunter Yurachek hired Eric Musselman. He's not going to turn around and fire him 2 seasons in. I think some of Arkansas's fans, with this football stuff that's been going on, and especially when Chad Morris got fired after 2 years, they somehow get it in their head that's the way things work. That was one of the weirdest things I've ever seen. Coaches almost don't get fired after 2 years. I mean, it might happen every once in a while. I mean, Jack Crow went 2 years in one game, and I thought that was one of the goofiest things I've ever seen. So you're not hiring a basketball coach who had a good first year and then suddenly go, even again, if things had gone badly this year, you don't turn around and fire them that second year. So it was never going to happen. Here's the thing, again, there's a lot of good people that post on these message boards and on social media. I read this stuff all the time. The goofballs are in the minority, but they're out there. So don't let it get to you. It's just part of the landscape out there.
I have something for you, and it actually goes based on this next question. Metropolis Hog wants to know, with the success of the basketball teams on the other side of this coin and the Razorback sports as a whole, do you think powers that be are willing to do what it takes to make sure Musselman and Yurachek are with our program for years to come? Piggybacking off of this, obviously recent chatter is that if Minnesota fires their coach, could Minnesota get Eric Musselman? So, like, how do you keep him from leaving?
Well, and that's how. Let's say he doesn't get another offer, nobody comes after him, and that may or may not happen. Then he's got things built into his contract where he gets bonuses and things, and they might give him Yurachek might look at him and say, he had a great year, I'll restructure your contract and give you a raise. Where you get a big raise is if somebody goes after you. Times are tough right now because of COVID. I mean, the revenues are down, but Yurachek still managed to come up with some extra money for Barry Odom, because a couple of schools went after him, the defensive coordinator on the football team, and they paid him more money. So I don't think the fact that you've got these COVID revenue shortfalls would stop Arkansas from trying to keep Eric Musselman. Now, would he stay? Is there some school out there, a dream school, go back to his roots, go back to some, what if Duke or North Carolina opened up? What would he do? Well, I don't know him well enough to know what would happen there. Most coaches have kind of a dream job that they would take. They may not talk about it, but even if they're happy where they are, there's this other job. If they ever got it, they would take it. Some coaches have taken that dream job and realized they made a mistake. Friends of Mike Anderson think that's what he did when he went from Missouri to come here. Look how he's doing pretty well where he is now. So going to that dream job is not always the right thing to do, and coaches don't always do it. They may think that would be a great job, but I've got it good, I'll stay here. So the bottom line is, I don't know what would happen with Musselman. Now with Yurachek, it's the same thing. He's done a great job, especially in hiring coaches. Has anybody come after him yet? Not that I know of. If they did, would the Board of Trustees try to keep him? Sure. And that's when he would get a big raise. But again, he may have a job out there that he wants. We just don't know.
Absolutely. All right. Question here. Alabama Hog wants to know, can you provide an update on how Ilana Oden recovery is progressing? She has been, has she been involved in team meetings and or workouts? This is women's basketball, by the way.
Yes, she had an ACL injury. She was a player of the year in Arkansas in 2019 and the #9 ranked point guard in the country. That's good stuff. So I can understand why people are wondering what's happened to her. What's happened to her is Gary Blair, going back into the past.
Mike won't be offended.
Mike Neighbors has so much talent.
Yeah.
On his team right now, especially in the front court, that there's no pressure on him to bring her along. It's an ACL injury. Give her as much time as she needs. It'll heal better if you don't put pressure on her right now. So that's what they're doing. Now, what you found out, because I asked you to do this because you have good connections over there, they like her. She's at practice every day. She's working out. She's a great teammate. There's no problem over there. They just aren't in a hurry to bring her along because of, you know, the ACL injury. Now, looking ahead to next year, when you lose a lot of that talent, she will be back, and she's the number 9 point guard in the country from her recruiting class. And then Jersey Wolfenbarger, she's number 1.
Yeah.
So if you've got the number 1 guard, high school guard in women's basketball coming in to go with the number 9 guard from 2 years ago, what do you got? You got a lot of serious talent there. So I don't think they're worried about next year, but they're very patient about next year.
You got to be smart. I mean, again, you've talked about talent. They've got Michaela Daniels running most of the point along with Destiny Slocum this year. Destiny, Chelsea Dungy, Amber Ramirez, Taylor Thomas. Then you've got Macy Weaver and a couple of, but that's 6 seniors right there. I mean, you came in with a very top-heavy class to begin with.
Because of COVID.
Yeah. All right. Austin Hog Fan says, can you share any insight on who might yet get added to this year's football team with those last 4 openings?
One of those openings has been filled. That's Tykees Crawford. When was that news? A week ago, 2 weeks ago? I can't remember how long.
No, Tykees Crawford was signed before signing day. Before he was an early enrollee.
Whatever it is,
he was a late ad though.
He's one of the 4. And I think he went to the University of Charlotte. And you look at that and you say, well, what's up with that? How good can he be? Well, what happened was he didn't have his ACT score. And there were a lot of schools that couldn't take him till he got it. And I think they just jumped in and said, hey, we'll take a chance with you. You come here, you sign with us, we'll figure out a way to get you eligible. Well, he signed with them, and right after that, the NCAA relaxed that rule because of COVID. So he didn't have to have that score. So he was there for a year. Now he's eligible here to play immediately. And here's Otis Kirk. I talked to him this morning about Tykees. Now he's a 6'5", 340-pound offensive tackle. And he thinks he could end up being a starter this fall. He's that good. So if that happens, he probably becomes the biggest name in the entire recruiting class, because you're getting a guy with experience that's got size and can come in and start on your offensive line. Why is that important? Because I've said before, I really think Sam Pittman in year 2 is going to run the ball more. And he wants a better offensive line, and I think they're going to play bully ball a little bit more, especially with a quarterback that's, his arm is good, but it's not great. He's more of a runner. Yeah. So this would be a huge addition to the class, and he's already here.
You know who he reminds me a lot of when you look at the tape, and again, just raw talent at his age is Denver Kirkland. And you know, Sam Pittman coached Denver Kirkland here a couple years ago, but he reminds me a lot of him. So, all right, question Little Weezy is curious and asks, do we know if the height of the new baseball performance center at Baum Stadium will help to block the wind blowing in from right field, possibly leading to more home runs?
Well,
don't we wish?
I don't know anybody on the construction crew, so I could not find out how tall it is. But it's a 3-story building, and it's every one of those floors is not a normal 8-foot ceiling, it's taller. So I'm going to say that's probably somewhere between 35 and 40 feet from the field. So I would say yes. Anytime you got a wind out of the south and a ball is less than 35 or 40 feet up in the air, in other words, more of a line drive homer, it's going to help. Anything that gets way up, a real high towering fly ball to right could still get knocked down. But here's the thing, that works with both teams. Your opponent can hit the ball to right field too. So it might knock the wind down and allow them to hit a home run just like it does you. So I think it all comes out in the wash.
Well, I will say this, we don't know, but we do know on Thursday night it didn't do any help for Robert Moore trying to hit a home run. You know, it was just a long single for him. It just bounced off the top of the thing and fell back in. Didn't really help him out much with the big building right there.
For college than Major League, because I thought if it hit the yellow, regardless of where it came, whether it bounced back or went over, it's a home run. But because it bounced back, and they were looking at that, they were reviewing it because there's a net behind the top of the wall, and they thought maybe it hit that net and bounced back out. And once they confirmed that it hit the yellow, then it was just a long single.
Oh gosh, I was so, yeah, that was wild. I'm just saying. All right. Superhog 1959 says, over the years, I have seen referees, umps, and officials make calls against us that cost us many games, even championships. The Southwest Conference and the SEC, can you name some of the most damaging and obviously blown calls that you've seen?
You know, I don't tend to like remember stuff like that because it's not a big deal to me. I remember it when it happens, the year, like we all know the Auburn game.
Like Auburn, because it's fresh.
That happened. But there are two that I do remember because my best friend remembers them, and I've said this before, he was the only Razorback fan in my hometown. This was west of Lubbock. Everybody was a Texas Tech fan. He was a Razorback fan. And he called me up both times after each of these, and it's really 3 different calls in 2 games. So I'll go to the first one. It was the 1969 Texas-Arkansas game, December 6, 1969, Fayetteville, Arkansas, Razorback Stadium. I was actually in college at the time, and I was selling Boy Scout merchandise at Leonard's Department Store in downtown Fort Worth. I was going to North Texas State and had to drive down there every day, down I-35 to work and then go back to Denton. So I was down there on a Saturday, and I talked this other kid into working for me so that I could go down to the employee break room and watch this game on TV because I hated Texas and I wanted Arkansas to beat them. So I'm watching this, and then my buddy calls me back. Of course, Arkansas lost the game 15-14, and he said, "Did you see that first touchdown pass that they called back?" And it was a touchdown to Chuck Dicus from Bill Montgomery, and it was over in the kind of the right side of the south end zone. Well, all the way over on the left side of the field, over by the Texas bench, there was this mysterious flag that came out as the touchdown was scored. And the ref over there called holding. And it was so delayed. I mean, if you got holding on a pass play like that, you'd think it would be called when it happens, not 10 seconds later after you scored a touchdown. And he said, in those days, all of the referees were from Texas. So he was like cheating Texas referee. Now, it's not the only reason why Arkansas left the Southwest Conference, but it was a factor with the fans for sure, because they had had years of that kind of stuff, and they were just absolutely convinced that these Texas referees were cheaters.
Yeah.
I'll leave that at that. Now, the second one was 2 years later. I'm in the Army by then, and I'm in the barracks at Fort Rucker, Alabama, which is the Army's helicopter school. And it was the Liberty Bowl in late December. And I remember I was the only person down there watching that game in that room. It was a huge room, and I got right up front watching the television. And there were 2 calls in that game. And in those days, if you had a bowl game, you had referees from one conference and referees from the other. So there were SEC officials and Southwest Conference officials because it was an Arkansas-Tennessee game. Well, this one referee, and he made both calls. Early in the game, Arkansas kicked a field goal, and he wiped it out with a holding call. And I remember watching that and seeing the replay, and you couldn't see it. There was no holding call. It was just manufactured. So again, my buddy's mad about that the next day. But then also, toward the end of the game, Arkansas had the ball. They had a 4-point lead, as I recall. And there was a fumble. Arkansas fumbled in their own territory. But this Arkansas player, can't remember his name, fell on it, got up, and gave it to this ref, and he immediately gave it back to Tennessee. Well, it was just obvious that he recovered the ball. That call was so terrible that it led to a rule change, which has been in effect ever since, which is when you have a bowl game, you have to have neutral officials. They can't be officials from either of the conferences that the 2 teams are represented by. And it's all because of that Liberty Bowl. And my buddy still talks about both of those all 3 of those calls. So that's what I remember just because he tells me about it all the time.
All right, Lanny says a few weeks ago you said you thought the athletic department would increase the size of baseball crowds later in the season because of COVID-19 cases if they were dropping and because of the vaccinations taking place. Is that going to happen?
It's not only going to happen, it's going to happen immediately.
Okay.
The issue is how much bigger will the crowds get. What happened was last week, Asa Hutchinson, the governor, announced that these COVID directives on the crowd size for bars, restaurants, and even large venue things like baseball games, basketball, football, they've had directives on those. You can have this many people. He relaxed that and it's now called a guideline or a suggestion. It's not 100% enforceable. They're just saying, we think you should do this, but you use your own judgment. When that happened, and I called over the athletic department today, I was told they got inundated with calls about this because if you read the interpretation, Arkansas is free to do whatever it wants now. It's just a suggestion, it's not a mandate. But I was told that they're still going to be careful. They're still going to work with the governor's COVID safety committee, and probably what will happen is the way it will work like this is the athletic department will say, okay, we got this A&M basketball game coming up, and we got a 4,000 crowd limit. Could we put 2,000 more people in there? And if the COVID committee says, yeah, we're okay with that, then they will call people, season ticket holders, who don't have tickets to that game, and they'll call people until they get them sold. So I think there will be a larger crowd for the A&M game. Now for baseball, the same thing. But here's the deal. The governor also said that if by the end of this month it continues to look good, the COVID cases continue to drop, deaths go down, hospitalizations go down, the mask mandate will go away. You won't have to wear masks anymore. And he will eliminate all of these suggestions, and then people will be free to do what they want if you own a bar or a restaurant, or if you are an athletic department with a large venue like Baum-Walker Stadium. So then they would be free to do whatever they wanted without any sort of, it'd just be up to them. And I really believe by April we could see some really large crowds at Baum Stadium if everything goes well with COVID, if these numbers continue to go down. So all of that's really good news. And the best news is mask mandate, right?
Mask mandate.
Can you imagine not having to wear a mask? I see somebody with a mask sitting right over there.
What you got to call out Nick for? That's terrible. People don't even know who Nick is. We're going to introduce you to Nick.
Well, we can't direct the camera over there. He's watching the show and he's wearing a mask.
Yeah, he's our new guy. So
he's our
that's
new
who
guy.
Nick is.
And
You
he's
wanna come
very
say hi?
safety conscious.
You can come up here and say hi. He says no. Maybe next week.
But that could go away at the end of the month.
Yeah. I might still wear one until I have this baby.
You can do whatever you want. I think we'll still see them. But the people that don't like wearing them.
Sure. I think each his own right now and how they feel. But that is exciting, and it's progress, and it's, another step back to normalcy, which is exciting.
Thank you.
All right, that's going to do it for Ask Mike this week. Everyone, thanks for joining us. We'll see you next week.